Welcome to Founder Rising, the podcast for women founders in wellness coaching and consulting who are ready to build businesses that create freedom, impact, and income. I'm your host, Christine Huckala, business coach, former psychotherapist, and mentor to women scaling service-based businesses. Today, I'm joined by Adyna K. Pressley, founder and CEO of AKP Innovations based in New York. She helps women build leadership, confidence, and purpose-driven businesses through her global empowerment work. Adyna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. I've heard so much about you, and I'm really excited to connect and dive into your story. So I want to start with something that maybe not so fun is a layoff. You were laid off at some point in your corporate career, and it sounds like that was really, a launching point for you. If you could just share with me a little bit about what was going on in your life then, and what was that like?
So to be honest with you, the layoff I kind of saw coming. We had some, you know how it is in corporate. There was a shift on the executive team. There was some mismanagement and bad decisions being made during that time. So, of course, the writing is on the wall when they start changing some of the benefits that you're used to. I was there for 34 years, so I was grandfathered into a lot of those benefits. And when I started seeing those start to shift and some even getting eliminated, I already knew that eventually, it was going to happen. So during the second wave of layoffs, I was one of them. And to be perfectly honest with you, I was actually happy.
Wow. Yeah. What were you happy about? Like, what made you so happy about getting laid off?
So in my 34 years in my career, I would say the first 30 years I loved. You ever heard that saying, what is that saying? The saying is, if you do what you love, you never work the day of your life.
Yes.
That's how I really felt in that first 30 years. The last 4 years, I got promoted to vice president of operations. So now I'm going back to the corporate side of things. So I'm dealing with the politics associated with, running the business through operations. When I was in my other position, I was VP in our regional offices. So I was client facing. I was doing education with their employees. I was helping the, administrators run their business, run the plan. So I loved that because I had a lot of client contact. Now I'm dealing with the big wigs.
A totally different ball game. Totally different ball game. Experience.
Yeah, and honestly, I hated it. I hated it.
To have those experiences and know what you don't want to ever do again.
Yes. And during that time, we had so much change going on. And then, just the leadership it just wasn't there. Not everybody is meant to be leaders. You shouldn't be promoted to become management or executive because you sold, billions of dollars in product. No, you should do that job if you are qualified to do that job. And I noticed when I got there that a lot of these people just wasn't. It just wasn't that
so hard, especially when you have the awareness and you know what it takes to be a good leader.
Exactly. So at that time, I was burnt out. Like literally. And I know everybody uses that word nowadays, is the big word, but I really was burnt out.
It's also true for a lot of people.
Yes, it really did. And I felt myself, what I always did was I motivated my team. I had staff from all across the United States. So my job was to make sure that I kept them motivated. And I remember when we were going through all this stuff and I'm telling them there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to get better. We're doing this. We're doing that. Just keep on keeping on. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was unraveling.
Wow. I was keeping it strong and held together for everybody else, but you couldn't do that anymore for yourself.
It's so tough. And I remember it got to the point where I had a falling out with my direct report. And I literally, after I hung up the phone with him, I went and I got my benefit estimate. I was like, let me see what it looks like when I'm ready to retire. And I already planned to retire this year because I was just so burnt out. But then the layoff happened, and then I just took it as like, thank you. You guys did me a favor.
I can imagine like some of that happiness you described earlier must have been just intermixed with so much relief.
It was. Yeah. It literally was. It literally was. Because when I closed my laptop after having that meeting with the HR person and my direct boss, who I actually enjoyed working with, because there was, of course, a shift, I felt like a ton of bricks lifted up off of my chest.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
literally. I sat there and I was just like, they have no idea that they really did me a favor.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So here's the thing that I get curious about, though, Adyna. A lot of folks, when they would get laid off, would start looking for another job, right? Not you. You knew that you didn't want to go back to corporate. Help me understand the timeline here, but I know there was like a friend's trip to Nashville that was super pivotal for you. What happened that made you pivot from corporate to being self-employed, becoming an entrepreneur?
So my initial response to myself once I closed that laptop was like, I don't want to work for anybody else ever again. I was
Wow.
like,
Wow. That's really clear.
yes, I was very clear with that. My initial plan was, okay, I love to travel. Everybody knows me, knows I love to travel. So I was like, I'm going to take a year and I'm just going to travel. Now, granted, I did that while I was working, but I really was going to focus on my travel.
Yeah.
And I wound up going on a girls' trip to Nashville. And you know how it is. You have a bunch of friends. You know what each other. You know we all have a job, but we don't know what each other do.
Yeah.
So if you're not a doctor, I don't know that you know. If you're not a cop or something like that,
Right.
I don't know what you do. So my cousin, who was hosting the girls' trip, says, "Oh, I saw on TikTok that you know how you have friends and you know what you know you got a job but you don't know what each other do."
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, she was like, they had like you do this PowerPoint and you do a presentation to your friends of what you do. So I laughed. I was like, I'm so over the presentations. I said, now listen, we can have a conversation. And then on top of that, she wanted PowerPoint. I was like, you're out of your mind.
My corporate days are behind me.
Over that. But you know, we were having lunch and we said, well, you know what, since we're all having lunch and we're sitting here, let's just go around the table and do a round.
Yeah. That sounds like a little less pressure.
Yes. And then as we're going around and I'm looking at some of my friends like, oh, that's what you do? Like, that's great.
I'm totally going to steal this idea and do it with my friends.
I think it's amazing. I honestly do. And as we went around and I got to myself, and of course, you know, me being the person that I am, I start off like, well, I'm unemployed. And then I go and I start to speak about, you know, all the work that I did in the financial sector. And as I'm telling them, and the funny thing was, even though I was in retirement readiness for a pension company, and again, I loved it, but my real love and my real passion was developing the people that worked for me. So even before I got laid off,
on that in our opening conversation.
yes, before I even got laid off, and again, I knew it was coming, I made sure that everybody that was under me was in a better position before I left. So a lot of them got raises, got promoted. And then, of course, the ones that directly worked for me, you know, was promoted to vice presidents and, you know, and all these management positions. So that part of my job is what I really loved. And as I was explaining that to them, because they had a lot of questions because they knew that I had such a large team, how did I manage, you know, the different personalities and, you know, different situations and challenges that you come across. And I'm telling them that, they looked at me and was like, why aren't you doing this for yourself? And I was like,
Oh.
And I was like, you know, I never really thought about it because I really had in my heart and spirit, I wasn't going to work anymore. So I really thought about it. And when I took this, I actually wound up taking a solo trip right after that, a couple of weeks later. And I took a trip to Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'd never been on Amtrak before. So I got on Amtrak and I took that 9-hour ride. Yep, I took my laptop, I took my headphones, and I was just like, let me see what comes out of this. Yeah. And that was the purpose of the trip. And what wound up happening before the actual business was my book.
Oh my goodness.
I wound up, starting the book.
Yeah. What's your book called, Adyna?
So it's called Rise Into You, Reclaiming Power, Love, Life, and Legacy. And I felt that was so appropriate,
Love the name.
Considering what I was going through, and I was reclaiming my life.
Yeah.
Love, of course, but my legacy too. Yeah. And lastly, my power, which was overall what I felt like I was reclaiming by starting my own business.
Yes, yes. So when you opened your own business, what were some of the initial services? Like, what did you do? What were the services you provided to folks at the beginning?
So it was really the leadership part. I found that when I was, when I was in my position, I was limited to the mentorship when it came mentorship. Not everybody has that. Not everybody wants to do it. Because one of the things that I felt, and I recently had a conversation with some women about it, sometimes women can be a little bit competitive. And sometimes, you think guys are, they can be a little competitive, and sometimes they gatekeep. And that was never me. I was always the person that if I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't setting somebody up to lead.
Yeah. I'm such a relationship focused person. I imagine that just, was counterintuitive to how you operate.
Exactly. So I felt like that was a need. That was a need that I needed to address, that I be that mentor to, any woman, regardless of what stage they are in their life, to help them advance their career, even their personal lives. I know one of the things that I suffered from, and now that is part of my life, and there's no negotiation, is my rest, is my peace, is, taking time for myself to reset. So everybody laughs at me because I talk about Gilberto, who is my massage therapist that I see every month, and I'm surprised we're not in a relationship. We've been together for so long. But that's my reset, to take that time, that hour every single month to go for my massage.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So talk to us a little bit about the pivot from the corporate world, to a short period of time thinking like you were just going to be retired, right? And now all of a sudden stepping into the world of entrepreneurship. What was easier than you expected? What were some of the early wins, and what was unexpected or more difficult or challenging than you anticipated?
Well, I'll say the early win was, first of all, I knew that if I wanted to grow the business, I needed to be visible. I knew I had the credibility based on the fact that I've worked for 34 years. So,
you're not new to the industry.
Yeah, I have the experience. But now it's just trying to get out there, trying to be heard, trying to get my story out, trying to get people to like me and trust me, because that's what people buy, That's how I've always been successful in the pension business. It's like the people wanted our 401k services because they like the Adyna.
Yeah. And it's not hard for a lot of us who are doing work that we love. We're genuinely good-hearted people to build that trust. But the key is we got to get in front of them. We got to have those opportunities to build those relationships. Yes.
So when I started that journey, because I already knew what the plan was as far as like what I was going to offer and what I wanted to do, not only for individual women, but also for organizations, because, sometimes too, organizations have a hard time of defining what their culture is, what their mission is. So sometimes they need somebody to come in to do that for them. But I wrote to Oprah.
Oh, hey, that's so cool.
I wrote to Oprah because one night I was laying in bed and I couldn't sleep, and I'm scrolling on my phone. Yeah. And I saw a post that said, "Have you been fired?" And I thought about it. It was like, "Are you a woman and have you been fired?" And I thought about it. I'm like, I am a woman. And technically I was fired. Yeah. So I wrote to her, and to be honest with you, thought nothing of it. I was just like, yeah, this is Oprah. Nobody's going to, little old me want to hear what I got to say.
Yeah. Sure. Thousands of people have written in.
Yeah. The next day, I get a message from her protection team, and I'm like, oh.
No way. That must have been surreal.
It was. And I'm sitting in my doctor's office as I'm checking my messages because she steps out, and I start crying. So when she comes in, she goes, "Oh my God, Adyna, what's wrong?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's happy news, but I can't tell you."
Oh, that must have been so hard.
It was amazing. So fast forward, I went through the process of, meeting with the initial contact, and I met with the producers. They loved my story, and they asked me, are you available to meet? And I was like, absolutely. And even if I wasn't, I'd make myself available.
I will put everything on pause for this.
Absolutely. And it was funny, I actually did. I was flying out to Atlanta, and I had to change my trip.
Oh my God. I would have done the same thing, Adyna.
Yes. So that was huge for me, because to be perfectly honest with you, once I did that episode, and my little 8 minutes of fame really got people to pay me some attention. So a lot of people started reaching out to me, for my services and stuff. And that was the huge
visibility. Yeah. Yeah. Now I will say, like, not every successful business owner needs to be featured on Oprah.
Right.
But for that I can imagine, what a blessing that was, and how that expedited your visibility and your ability to connect with people.
Yeah, but I have to be honest, and aside from that too, just getting myself out there, putting myself out there, yeah, to get people to find value in what it is that I'm doing, as far as trying to work with individual women and help them with their mentorship and help them on their career path and set them up with a plan to advance, whether it's in career or in their personal life. And then also too with the organizations, because again, like I said, it's a lot of times organizations don't have, and I actually focus on like the small to medium sized businesses. And the reason why is because they really don't have the team or the structure.
Many of them are just starting out with leadership development and don't know what to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I learned during that girls trip, because a couple of the women had their own businesses, and what they felt they were challenged with was trying to get good people. And I told them, I said, a lot of time it's not about getting the good people. One, it has to do with the training. Do they know what the business is about? Do they know what the culture is? Do they know what the need is of the clients that you're serving? And when they thought about it, they were like, oh my God, you're right. So that's really, what, like I said, that sparked it.
Understanding like what the real problem is here.
Yeah. And I think that's what I also like to tell other business owners. You got to know what the problem is that you're solving. It has to be clear.
Yeah, otherwise you're just spinning your wheels.
Exactly. And I'm not going to lie, in the beginning, I was struggled with that because I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in. But then I realized I've always been a chameleon. I always knew how to shift. So whatever the need is and I have a solution to it, then that's what I'm going to go for.
Yeah. Before we keep going, I want to say something. If you're listening to this and thinking, oh, I'm in that season right now, I'd love to talk to you. FoundHer Rising isn't about polished success stories. It's about real growth. The hiring decisions, the revenue plateaus, the identity shifts that happen when your business starts stretching you. If you're building something meaningful in wellness, coaching, or consulting, and you're willing to have an honest conversation about what scaling actually looks like, apply to be a guest. The link's in the show notes. I'd love to meet you. Okay, back to the episode. I think you're touching on something that I hear from a lot of women service providers, and it feeds in my opinion, like into this kind of bigger perspective of not only are you developing the service that you provide, and there's so much that could be said. I mean, it's a full-time job in and of itself, just serving your clients, right? And figuring out how to position your offers and what growth and training you need and how to meet folks where they're at and give them the best transformation, like all the things that we want to do as service providers and why we often become entrepreneurs in the first place. But then there's this whole other piece of now we're running our own business, right? So speaking of spinning our wheels and running into challenges, what were some of the things as a very experienced service provider but brand new business owner you experienced early on that you just didn't anticipate or that were a surprise to you about being a business owner?
For me, help.
Say more. Say more, Adyna.
Help. And even when I was in corporate, I always had a hard time with letting go and letting somebody else do certain things, because when I was working in corporate, I was the face of the company. And then now working for, creating AKP, I'm the face of my company.
Yes.
And one of the things that I struggle with, and I always struggled with, was letting go, letting somebody else take on certain responsibilities, because I'm the face, my name is on it. I want to make sure it's done right. And I feel like
huge sense of ownership there.
Exactly. And I feel like, and I always had this sense of, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, many of us are taught that. It's not like we just have these false beliefs for no reason. We often grow up in a society where, as strong, independent women, we're taught that asking for help can be seen as weak, that we should be able to do it all ourselves, carry it all ourselves. And
Yes.
It's really hard when we get to a point in our business where we realize that those beliefs aren't serving us anymore.
No. And that's what I had to learn. I had to learn how to let go, because I felt like that was holding me back, because I had other work to do, and I really shouldn't be dealing with, let's say, administrative tasks or responding to people, that type of stuff. You can get somebody that's capable and trainable to do that. Yeah. So I would say,
What would you say was like the biggest mindset shift or belief that you had to like break down, change, overcome to kind of get to the other side of that and be willing to trust people, hire people, rely on others?
Well, I had to believe in myself that, okay, if you want to get to that level of independence, you're going to have to take the time, because that too, you have to do the work to get that person to help you, you know? So take the time to, to train somebody up to be a mini you. And, when I think about it, I was like, I did that my whole career. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
you
I
did.
did that my whole career. But again, when it comes to yourself, it's very personal.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah, it's
personal.
hard to think about and understand the steps that you're going to take to get there. It feels kind of overwhelming at the beginning.
It does. It does. But once I felt comfortable enough, and again, it has to do with the connection with the person, make sure that you're aligned. They have the same vision that you have. They have the same work ethic that you have. They're consistent and they're reliable, because I pride myself on being that. So I need somebody that, I need someone just like that in order to work with.
For sure. As you shifted your mindset around that and took the risk to start hiring people, what has that freed you up to do? In other words, like how has your business changed since you started? What are you doing now?
So right now I'm focusing on speaking. I've been loving the speaking space.
Not surprise me at all, Adyna. I love this.
I know I talk a lot, but
wonderful.
So I actually just came back from Paris. I did a speaking engagement yes, and it was so amazing. It was a women's conference out in Paris. So I just came back from doing that. I'm actually preparing to go to Oxford University in London in a couple of weeks to speak on a panel for leadership. And then I think the most exciting one I'm going to do, believe it or not, and I know that sounds great, those places, but I'm supposed to be going to Belize I'm excited to speak at a prison. And I'm actually going to speak to both men and women. To speak to the power of, reinvention and, starting over and putting yourself first, self-worth. So I'm really excited about that one.
That is fantastic. You told me right at the beginning that your goals are like to reach people, to get your message out there, to travel, and like you're literally doing all of those things. It's so exciting. Where do you see all this going when you look into the future, 1 to 3 to 5 years? What is it that you really want to build?
Ooh, that's a big question.
I'm known for asking the big questions, Adyna.
That's a big question. I mean, ultimately, it's not like I want to be famous, if it comes, it comes. But to be, like I said, I just want to make a difference in people's lives that they can say, and I've heard it. And again, that's why I know that it's in me and I can do it. Like what you said or what you told me or what you taught me helped me get to where I am right now. It changed my life. I had someone tell me one time that I saved their life, and it literally made me cry.
Wow,
like they saved my life. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate it so much, like a lot of what you've shared, Adyna, but this piece about like, it's not about being famous. And I think, whether you use famous or, visible or, whether you consider that having 100,000 Instagram followers or whatever it is, I think that's a piece that a lot of women that in my network that I speak to are worried about, is the way that people might perceive them as they become more visible. And it's a balance that, I've certainly navigated. I've navigated this in a lot of conversations with women that I've supported, is this balance between recognizing that what we want to do, most of the women that I speak with, what's really important is impact, right? Is doing meaningful work and creating a lasting positive impact on the people we serve, whatever that looks like. Underneath it, through all the conversations I've had, like that's really what's been at the core of it for a lot of women and what's driving them. It's just that oftentimes what comes hand in hand with having a bigger impact and reaching more people, right, is being more visible. And there's the shadow side of that when done poorly, can be out of alignment and out of integrity. How have you navigated, that balance between doing meaningful service and having an impact versus like staying in alignment and in integrity with yourself as you grow?
Being myself and not changing. I've always been like that. So when I started in corporate, I started in, excuse me, I started in as an entry level position.
Yeah.
And as I grew in my career, I was the same Adyna that was in a file
I love
room.
that. Just like the consistent presence. I'm going to be me no matter where or how I show up.
Regardless. So I still, and it was funny, everybody say, Adyna has all these friends in the company. Yeah, I can go to the mailroom and I could get them to do something for me, just like I can get someone, in another department to do something for me. I always stayed, I stay grounded in being my authentic self. So what you see is what you get. And that's how I plan to continue to be. I want to be that sister friend. I want to be that, like you can feel comfortable speaking to. I never want to be bigger than who I think I am, because first of all, I have a problem with people like that. I really do. Because it's like, it's not that serious. If you say that you're doing this work for impact, if you're saying that you want to make change, if you're saying that you're doing this from your heart and your spirit, because I feel like this was something I was called to do, then I need to make sure that I maintain who I've always been. That same round the worry girl from New York that grew up in the, housing in the housing projects, that just happened to advance herself. I'm going to still be that same person. I still go back to my old neighborhood. I recently went back and I did a session with the seniors in my old neighborhood. And that warmed my heart so much. They had started their own women's group at 65 and better. They started their own.
Fantastic.
And they invited me to come because they found, I was like a hometown hero. And I went back. And when I say that warmed my heart, because that also showed me that reinvention doesn't retire. So it was just, so again, it's just being my authentic self, never changing, and not let the influence cloud my judgment.
Yeah, I love that message. I think it's so important. Thank you for sharing. Probably my final question. We'll see. Sometimes it'll escalate into another, but let's talk about growth for a minute. As you imagine, continuing to serve, continuing to be visible, having a bigger impact, we all know that as we grow the business itself, can become more complicated. There's sometimes need for more team, more support. With that comes the need for systems, and sometimes finances can get a little bit more complex. What do you imagine are kind of the growing edges for you, specifically as a business owner, as you continue to grow your business?
It would definitely be the systems. Because again, a lot of this I do myself.
Yeah, it all lives in your head right now.
Yeah, so I would say the systems, because I do believe that you have to have a system in place. Now, granted, I'm a very detailed person, so yeah, I have certain systems that I work for that keeps me in alignment with my to-do list and, the projects that I'm working on. It gives me, status updates. So I would say the systems, but then I know the systems are going to have to grow and I'm going to have to step away and be okay with creating something that can run itself. But right now for me, yeah, I would say it's that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And in my experience of why that is when our business is smaller and when we're responsible for more things, we're wearing more of the hats. We're in charge. We can do it however we want. We can use our pen and paper list. We can use our sticky notes. We can hold things in our head. We can journal, whatever it is we do. We all have different strategies. But the problem is as you grow, and especially you bring on those first few support people, unfortunately, they're not psychic most of the time, and they can't read our minds. And the systems start to become necessary so that we can train people, so that we can document, how we do things, what makes our culture, so that we can more effectively train and delegate and trust the people on our team, to do the job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think is the hardest part of that for you? Is it just like lack of knowledge or experience, like lack of support, just as like a whole new growth edge? Like what part of the systems in itself are hard for you?
I would say the growth edge, and I would also say learning. Because it's so much out there, especially with technology and especially with AI. And I, even on the side, I take an AI course, so that I can stay up to date with what's going on, what the changes are, what the shifts are. It's been very helpful because it has allowed me to take some of these use some of the virtual assistants to manage some of my responsibilities.
Yeah.
So I would say it's definitely that. It's definitely the growth, and it's definitely the knowledge. You have to take time. And I'm the type of person, I got to touch it and feel it to understand it.
Yes.
So even if I'm eventually going to shift it somewhere else, I still got to know it. I still got to understand it. It still has to make sense for me in order for me to do that. Yeah. So, I would definitely say it's the growth. And
I think you've touched on a few points that are hard for a lot of business owners, myself included, on my own growth edge is one, just recognizing how much is out there. Start to research one thing and suddenly you've got hundreds of pieces of software to choose from, never mind the advancements with AI that we're more exposed to recently. And then on top of that, I also find a lot of business owners, they want to implement it themselves. They want to choose the software. They want to get their hands in there. But the problem is the temptation to get sucked in and to maintain control. And, I think what you're sharing, what you're experiencing, and what I've experienced a lot as well is just finding that balance between having the control and being the decision maker, but also knowing when to step back so that you don't end up wearing yet another hat in your business.
Right. And again, I feel like as long as I can understand it, I'll be okay with letting it go. Yeah, I just need to understand it. I can't. It's just not in me to not know what's going on the other side.
Yeah. I love that.
Maybe I need to work on that.
Well, no, I really appreciate your self-awareness, and I find like that ability to recognize like where our growth edge is and what we truly need, to feel comfortable, to be willing to let go, and where our growth is to like actually let go. This is the piece that's up for you, but we all have it. Me too. We all have our areas that are hard. But I think, my experience and what I see in you is like that self-awareness is going to take you far, because even when we do go too far down a rabbit hole, we can notice and we can step back and recover from that.
Yeah. And I think that is I have to be honest with you, that is one of my strengths. I've always been the type of person that I know my shortfalls. I know my shortcomings, I hold myself accountable.
It's not about getting rid of them. It's about working with them.
I'm okay with saying I'm working through it. I'm working through it. I'm a work in progress. Definitely. So I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Same here. I'm in the same club.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right, Adyna, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey, your exciting journey with us. I imagine that there are listeners out there right now who want to learn a little bit more about who you are, where to find you, maybe watch your Oprah episode. Where is the best place to track you down and find you online, Adyna?
Actually, my website, AdynaKPressley.com. It tells my story. It explains who I am. And like I said, what you see is what you get. Yes. I'm also on LinkedIn, and everything is with my name, Adyna K Pressley. So it makes it easy. Awesome. So I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And
fantastic.
And one other thing I did want to mention. Yeah. I just thought about it. I got 1,001 things on this brain of mine. I also did a docuseries called Next Level CEO, hosted by Damon John of Shark Tank, and that should be coming out shortly. So,
so exciting!
I'll definitely be promoting that soon. And as far as the clip is concerned, you can actually click on the link on my website to see my feature.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So many ways to interact with you and lots of stuff coming, I'm sure. Thank you, listener, for tuning in to FoundHer Rising. If today's episode resonated with you, follow the show, share it with another founder, and leave a quick review. It helps more women find these conversations. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or learn more at hucklehorizons.com. Until next time, keep rising and keep building the business that gives you freedom to live, lead, and create on your terms.